So I'm Tyler Smith. I farm in west central Saskatchewan. It'd be the north end of the Palliser Triangle, if anybody's familiar with that. Years ago when North America was discovered, a guy named by Palliser come over and marked out this triangle and said this area shouldn't be farmed. So here I am, a couple hundred years later. So I was kind of sitting on the fence for quite a while, watching other guys do this biological farming, and you hear the stories about, yeah, you got to get your bricks up and you don't use fungicides or insecticides, your chemical goes down. And my question for the longest time is, how do you get your bricks up? And anybody I dealt with, nobody seemed to know. But as time goes on, you find more people doing it, and they seem to be having luck. So it's a couple of years ago, it was like, well, enough screwing around. Let's do this now. So ordered up a extractor from Soilworks. Thought, why try and reinvent the wheel? We'll just get doing this, and we'll try and source some compost around, and trying to look for some high quality compost that'll work good. Soilworks, they couldn't ship it across the border, so it's like that would have been a good start if they could. So after looking around for quite a while, it seems like every city's got a vermicompost, and something led me to Hybrix in Edmonton, or Greg, and never met him before. It's just kind of how I was looking around, and there's like I guess Annalita, they had a worm farm up at Edmonton, and looked at some of their results and thought, yeah, no, we'll maybe skip on this. And when I was talking to Alice from Soilworks, she's like, well, there's this conference up in Saskatoon. You might be interested in it. And it's like, oh, hell, I'll check this out. And it's like, met Cindy and Greg, kind of had a lot of conversations. Pretty skeptical on a lot of things. There'd be like stuff like silica. Ask Greg about silica, and he's like, well, you should try some. So it's like, well, like tissue tests are at 350, 400 parts per million. That's high on their tests. So it's like, do I really need any more? He's kind of said, well, try it. So putting this liquid kit on, getting ready to make compost, and just kind of pump come with the tank. And we end up putting Surefire meter tubes on. So there's just bubbling some compost there. It's kind of, you get really good at filling it and emptying it and filling it and emptying it, filling it and emptying it. So his goal was to get 8 to 10 gallons down the cedar on everything that I farm. It's about 4,000 acres, just shy, 6.25 sections. So just started off with just straight compost, and then we'll add some sugar to it, and it'll add some molasses as the guy gets more comfortable with it. We just bring the drill back to the yard and hook it up to the well just to make sure everything's running, seeing how it's a ground drive pump. And like lentils in my area, they don't use a lot of water, so they're kind of a main crop, and they're kind of wimpy when it comes to poor soil. So like you can see this one germinated. First thing it does, it sends a taproot down. It basically goes into your anaerobic zone and say like, hey guys, I'm here, come get me. So it was used like lots of chemical seed treatments, and the root rots just seem to increase over time. So it's like, gotta do something different. So just part of my journey, jumping into other things. And you hear people using like, oh, you need your plants to have exudates, and it's just kind of interesting how things go. I think you can see some nodules on them, which that's like the main thing. I kind of compare this compost to pea and lentil inoculant, but multiply it by 10,000. So with lentils, with nodules, if you put much nitrogen down, you get no nodules till it uses up the N. And then it's like, okay, we're short N, so let's start making nodules. So if you do that, it gets too late. The plants don't really make much nodules, so that you don't have a great crop. Where if you're no N, your nodules start right off the bat. And I kind of look at the compost. It's like 10x of one strain of bacteria. So it's like cut my phosphate back. I cut the nitrogen out of the drill. I guess it'd be like 2015. So I just a single chute opener. And so I just put my nitrogen on foliar after seeding. Sometimes it's beginning of June, middle of June. This year it happened to be end of June and into July, which is like really, really late. And this year it's after years of trial and error, I just cut my canola rate back further and further and further. And I've been 10 years about 2.5 pounds an acre seeding rate. So there's some gaps and stuff in there, but it kind of works in with Dr. Dykstra and his orange trees and his populations. Like they keep cramming things in more and more and more. The Brix goes down, the health goes down. Well, we kind of see this in the canola. If you got room to walk around the plants when it's starting to bolt, there's still room for that to grow out. And by the time harvest comes, it'll be just solid right across. You won't be able to walk through it. And kind of helps get the Brix up, I guess. Kind of stumbled across that maybe by accident, or I guess like my grandfather, he always used to say in our area, if you seed real thick, you seed heavy, you'll have very poor crop. It'll just choke itself out in the end. So there's some old knowledge there. And yes, like even with seed treatment, the wireworm, you could kind of see patches. There's some missing crop in there. So just another one. So like first year with using compost, I got talking to Brad, and he was kind of saying, oh, maybe you should try a shot to foliar. So Brad and I kind of come up with seed and fruit and use some compost, a little bit of Zumacil, a little sugar, and give it a shot. And I don't know if you can see on the map where Kindersley is. I'm kind of right in that red dot where it's like poor topsoil moisture. But it's kind of like an every other year deals, kind of normal. You got some oats there. They're I think 11, 12 Brix. They had quite a big root ball on it for very little moisture. It seemed like it aggregated the soil pretty good. I was kind of surprised they actually grew that much on, like had 2 3/4 inches of rain through the growing season. Little bit of runoff, so there's like zero moisture after harvest on this. Like 0 to 4 feet was empty. End up finding out that once your Brix get over 10, well, the grasshoppers can't eat the canola. So I was like pretty excited about this, and ended up over at Brad's farm for his field day, and I mentioned to Greg about it's like the grasshoppers are dying just eating it. And he's like, now that you've seen this, people, when you talk to them and tell them about it, and people in academia, like they say it's not possible. It's like, I've seen it. My uncle, I rent his land now. He's in his mid 80s. And he was out crop checking this field, and he figured I sprayed it with insecticide. He went to my dad and he's like, yeah, that spray job Tyler did on his grasshoppers, that worked really good. And my dad kind of like, well, he never sprayed it. How does that work? And he's like, well, I used some molasses at seeding, and it must be the molasses maybe. So maybe get a little off topic here and there. So you could literally put your hand in the soil. You can see stuff growing now. You didn't really need a microscope. Didn't really see much of it, that kind of stuff happen before. So what's you seen this canola bricks get up, and it really sucks for grasshoppers. At harvest time, all the grasshoppers come in the yard, clean out my new trees. There's a few other guys had the same problem, so I'm like, this is July. I'm like, I got a little leftover canola seed. I got to make like a little cover crop mix by my trees. Then we'll see if we can get them eating the canola, or it'll keep the grasshoppers away from my trees. Which it worked awesome. The grasshoppers they come in after harvest, they'd eat the canola, they'd be dead, they'd be laying on the ground. Crickets would clean them up, but then flea beetles come in like crazy. So guy wasn't really ready to deal with that. I asked Greg, I said, well, what can we do about this? Like quick. And he says, we'll put a pound of sugar in 5 gallons of water, spray it out. It's like, it won't be perfect, but it'll kind of help. So that's what they did. And it probably took out 70% of the flea beetles. Thought it was kind of interesting. Like grasshoppers couldn't eat it, but the flea beetles managed to survive, and they went to town on it. Like it was crawling pretty hard. So you got a radish in there, or tillage radish growing. So like that'd be it. In the fall, the guy was cob biting, the guy would just find a loose crack in the ground and reach down with your hand, no shovel, pull it out. And thought it was very interesting, because when a guy inoculated the pig pen right away, within I guess it'd be maybe 5 or 6 days, the same stuff you'd see in the pig pen growing was the same stuff you'd see out in the field. So it kind of gets a guy excited. So, and then you got some volunteer seed at harvest time. So I guess it's like a free cover crop. So the little lentil there, he's making lots of root exudates. So I guess we'll maybe go back. That I had 5 lentil fields in that year, so there's sprayed them with grasshopper spray and fungicide, seeing how there's crazy amount of grasshoppers, and you get gray mold, the botrytis, and it doesn't matter if it's wet, dry, it'll come through. So it's like, well, do the fungicide and the grasshopper spray, and then after talking to Brad, he had some seed and fruit, and figured, well, I'll give this one field the compost extract and give it the biology. So 4 days after I did that, I went out and checked the bricks, and it was like 4 bricks higher. So I phoned Dale Wicks up, and I'm pretty excited about this. I'm telling him that, and he's like, well, I'll come up tomorrow and check it out. And he come up the next day, he checked it out, and he says, yeah, what you're seeing is right. I was like, oh, that's cool. So it's like, you're telling me I don't have to spray this for grasshoppers, or that 17, 18 bricks? And we're dry, so it's like, well, maybe the plants are just out of moisture, and that's why they're so high of bricks. But we looked around, and there's grasshoppers there. They weren't eating the lentils. We found kochia plat that would be about this high. So in the shadow, the grasshoppers had all the lentils cleaned out. So it's like, so in the shadow, it wouldn't be photosynthesizing very good. So it would be lower bricks, and you could literally see. Walk across the fence line, and you'd see aphids, you'd see ladybugs, lots of grasshoppers. I didn't have any aphids. I didn't have any ladybugs, but there was still lots of grasshoppers, and there's the odd weed in there. They're chewing on pretty good. So as exciting as that was, all them crops, they were all running around 30 bushels an acre. So it's pretty even compared to the extract or the grasshopper spray. But the grasshopper spray and fungicide, that come to like $40 an acre plus application time. The extract and all that, it wasn't anywhere close. Maybe took a touch more time, but there was a pretty good difference there. But the soil test shows there is a lot bigger difference on that. So I decided, well, I might as well try and make a bigger extractor. So this one's 12 feet across, and then figured, well, I'll just use a full sheet of steel instead of cutting it up. So you can get just about 3,000 gallons in there. And we just we'd put like 800 pounds, hang a bag in there, kind of speed things up for seeding. And then it's like, well, might as well pre-measure all the bags before seeding, and that way you're just picking it up and dropping them in. It did speed things up quite a bit, but. And then you get like Jeff was talking about, when you get some fish on there, it gets the little earthworms excited. I've never seen so many new earthworms as this year. They're everywhere. You can put a handful in, 2, 3, 4. It's kind of amazing. This would be the extractor going. You just hang it in there. It kind of found at 800 pounds in the bag that it would be pretty solid, so the air would just want to go around. And then it's like, well, that kind of sucks if the air's just going around. It's not going to really be doing any extracting. So that just end up got a bigger air compressor, and it's almost like you had to crack the bag. So you just put the wand in and loosen it up, and then after a bit, the air would go through, and it would make a nice extraction. That drain on the very right-hand side, that's just a sand separator, like the same one that Brian was running on his, just 3-inch. But we just tried to run 3,000 gallons plus. So it was like, oh, don't want it filling up the little can in the bottom with sand, and then it would be pushing through. So I just figured, I'll leave a little bit run out, so it just keeps putting the sediment in the back. And did have a little screen on the side, but it seemed like it would want to plug off once you get about a third left. So it's like, so screw it, they'll just get a bigger screen made up, and it's basically like a Bio 5, except quite a bit bigger. So like the next year, we got a little bit more moisture this year. The lentils, they kind of had the slow start, so I just more or less the full back to your roots program. I dropped the chemical seed treatment. Figured, like, why have phos in there? That your fungi isn't going to hook up with the plant if you got phos there. So cut the synthetic phosphate out, other than the couple pounds of EPHOS. Like for a lentil plant that's only supposed to be a foot high or 10 inches high, like they got some nice height to them, pretty easy to combine. So the first year, I was kind of still stuck in I would have put lots of phos down, because that's just what the guys did. It's always seemed like there was no limit to how much phos you could put down. And it got to the point where your yield wouldn't go up that much for extra phos. So I did one section of derm. I still put like 100 pounds of MAP on. And that was the only field I had a crop insurance claim on. The ECs were out of whack, like they were too high. You could see the little fertilizer pellet there all year round. So it's kind of helped the guy say, yeah, screw the phos. And I got hooked up with the rack. They were doing this 100 bushel acre canola trial. And they put on like 450 pounds because they're like a chemical company, I guess. So part of it, they put a weather station out there, and I just got a single shoot drill, so you can't put that much fertilizer through. So they spread quite a bit on the top. The canola trial, it pretty much was a wash. Like it was pretty even all the way across. And I ran 35 bushels an acre on whatever, 2 3/4 inches of rain, which was kind of impressive, I thought. The next year, they wanted more data, so they wanted the yield data in their trial where they put on the crazy amount of fertilizer and then where my normal fertilizer is. The second year, the difference was huge. Where we put the huge fertilizer, you can make the mile pass. The combine was not full yet. And this is outside the trial. And Kat, she's my wife. So I talking to her in the combine, it's like, yeah, I think you can make it to the end. There's quite a few more bushels outside the high fertilizer trial. So it's when she got to the end, it's like, I don't know how the grain stayed in there. And I thought, well, this is going to kind of wreck the numbers. She'll hit a little bump on the end and the grain will be spilling off the side. But we just more or less did one pass, went and weighed it. So there's like 0.9 of a ton difference. And like one pass on a 45-foot header, is that 4.5 acres roughly? So like 0.9 of a ton, that's huge. And it wasn't just the one pass. You could tell for that whole 80 acres, you just go down till the combine beeped, it's half full, and then you turn around and go back. So on the high fertilizer, you could almost go 2/3 of the way down the field, turn around and come back. Where outside the high fertilizer, you made the half-mile mark, so like half the way and turn around and come back. So their high fertilizer trial, it cost a guy a lot of money, I think, because it was probably double the amount of fertilizer I had on. And then it was the next year where it's showing the difference. So it's like, I kind of look at this biological farm and it's incremental gains. So we did a little bit of tillage. We really don't do much tillage. Like we'll do like a few spots, and yes, there's this field here. The year before, I probably combined or cultivated 40 acres. It floods out, and it's maybe like a 90-acre flat. So I didn't think there was much difference where a guy cultivated to not cultivating. But when a guy overlapped the yield map on there, anywhere the cultivator went, it was green on the yield map. So it was like 45 pounds of N a guy put on this beginning of July, and it was running like 90 bushels an acre and like mid 14% protein. So the math really doesn't add up on that, where all this inputs come to. So the first year, they're on those lentils that a guy give the biological instead of the grasshopper spray. It had quite a bit more nitrogen available and phos available. So like I had 5 fields in, so it was, instead of just having like strip trials, all the other 4 fields are pretty close into that mid 20 pounds nitrogen available, and then that would be around 30 pounds, 25, 30 pounds of phos. Where that field, the guy put the the biological on, like the nitrogen was, it was way higher. So going to the next year, I was a little skeptical. So I got another company to come in and did some soil tests on that field too, just to double check to just, yeah, a little skeptical. Maybe they messed up, but their numbers come back basically identical. So there's a lot of extra phos, even though a guy didn't put the extra phos on. Like there was maybe 15 pounds of fertilizer a guy put on there, so there's maybe 5-6 pounds of phos applied, but yet there's, I don't know, extra 30 pounds of phos there. So this last year, I put that to derm, and it ran like around 65 bushels an acre. And when I hauled it into the elevator, the guys in at Cargill told me I set a record for this area for high test weight. They said they haven't seen derm that heavy for years. And guys south of me, they're hitting like 50 pounds, low 50s. So like their stuff was grading like below feed grade because their derm was so light. And then I'm sitting there going, oh, I'm at the other end of the spectrum. So that field was just about 10 bushels an acre higher than my other derm field. So once a guy starts looking at the economics on that, it's huge. Like just like, well, there's 40 some dollars insecticide and fungicide on there. Well, then that made your crop not as good either. So, and this field, it's supposed to be poorer land when you look on the assessment. It's not supposed to work that way. So moving into this year, maybe you went the wrong way. I've got a bunch of soil tests done after harvest, and there's one thing I've never ever seen before, and I had to go look on there on the 6 to 24. I got phos showing up. I look back through, I had like 20 years of soil tests. Anytime I've done anything below 6, it's always been a 0 on the phos mark. So like this field, for putting 15 pounds of fertilizer on, and then this last year I put on like 3 pounds of EFOS. There's 200 pounds of phos there available. Like all of a sudden now a guy's kind of in like a excess phos. So I still got that other company to come in and did another soil test on this, and she's like, yeah, your phos in the spring is very similar to what you had left over. And she never did the lower one, the 6 to 24. So she's like, the amount of phos you put on was like really close to what you got for a yield. And then she asked me what the yield was, and I was like, well, 65. And then it's just kind of silence. And she's like, well, what did you put on? 1.5 pounds actual. Kind of find that interesting. She's fairly new agronomist, so we talked a little bit about what I'm doing, and it just doesn't fit in where she's working, so it's kind of abstract to her. I guess that's about all I got for pictures. I think could probably go on all day if a guy really wanted to, but that's just a few things that I've seen. So just incremental gains, and yeah, just keep plugging away.